Thank you for watching. My name's Glen Morgan. This is We the Governed, and today we're going to be talking about another story, unfortunately, of basically an employee working for the city of Morton here as their clerk and treasurer, who was caught and officially is now being prosecuted in federal court for stealing $937,000, almost $1 million.
Busted.
Now, I think it's important for us to tell these stories because if we understand how this happens in a little town like Morton, then we will understand how it happens almost anywhere, and this is a worthwhile story to get into. But before I do that, I just want to remind everybody, if you haven't done so already, hit the like and subscribe button down below if you like this type of content and you want others to know about it as well. Also, remind them to share this video with others, get the word out there, spread it far and wide. We want more transparency and public exposure of what's going on in our government, and I think sharing these videos with others will help us do that. Now, if you don't know where the city of Morton is, it is in Lewis County. It's actually I live in South Thurston County, so it's just a little ways to the south of where I live. And many people probably drive by this town, and maybe you don't pay enough attention to it. It's on your way out to White Pass. Maybe you're going up there snowboarding or skiing. And, of course, maybe you go out there for the Loggers Jubilee, and they have a great little museum there. It's actually a fun town. It's a great place to be. And it's a fun place to visit as well. It's not a big place. And who would know? And many people probably weren't aware of this so much until this report came out last year from the Washington State Auditor's Office. And it was basically a fraud investigation report. And it came out last August. Now, the actual initial audits and some of the investigation started to make the public rounds. At least people were finding out about it in early 2023 and started a little bit in 2022. But unfortunately, this fraud report, and once you get this, the fraud division here at the state auditor's office, that's the well-trained and the more professional and aggressive division in the state auditor's office. This fraud report's pretty damning when you look at it. Now, the reason why this story's made the news more recently is just last week, the Department of Justice and the U.S. Attorney's Office out of Seattle posted this formal notice that the clerk and treasurer for Lewis County, town of Morton here, is being charged federally in court with wire fraud for the more than $930,000 that has disappeared, that she stole from the county. Now, keep in mind, she did admit that she stole this, at least according to the state auditor's fraud report. So although they had referred this originally to the Lewis County Prosecutor's Office, it looks like the feds are the ones who are actually stepping in and digging into this. And they did cooperate, and it looks like they worked with the Department of Revenue a little bit in probably digging into just some of the financial shenanigans that went on. But let's dig into this a little bit more, because unfortunately, this clerk treasurer, Tammy here, she just really got her hands in the till. And it really started with this 2022 audit here that basically, and this is what really triggered the fraud investigation, it started with this audit that uncovered multiple $10,000 or more ATM cash withdrawals using the Morton debit card, essentially. Now, listen, that's unusual because generally if you are a small city, especially a small city like Morton, which has a budget of about $4.6 million a year, it's not a large city. Generally, it's highly unusual for a city to be needing to do big cash withdrawals. Why would they need big cash withdrawals like that? And so that's really what triggered a big red flag when the state auditor was out there looking at the city of Morton. Now, as they dug into it, basically the fraud investigators, who are a lot more aggressive than like a standard audit, because keep in mind Morton had been passing audits pretty regularly for the last decade while this fraud was going on, and so the regular audits aren't going to necessarily pick up on this, but when they saw something like that, that was enough for them to trigger the fraud division to actually get involved. And essentially what they uncovered here, first they uncovered the most obvious fraud, which was $311,727 that were actually cash payments that were unaccounted for and essentially stolen by the clerk. And these were generally cash payments over a fairly long period of time. Sometimes, though, in a given year, they could be as much as $20,000 or $30,000 that are basically citizens in the community coming in and paying their bills. Now, she would apparently indicate that the bills were paid, but would take the cash herself and then do some kind of transferring between funds or something, and in some way trying to conceal the disappearing money that was disappearing into her pocket. And so that was a fairly significant issue going on, but it wasn't the worst of it. The worst of it was actually $625,000, $857 in fake vendor payments. And this is where she would use basically false invoices to the city and for real vendors, but false invoices, fake invoices, and then instead take that money and just pay herself that money. And that amounted to quite a bit. If you really look over the last 9 years or so that she was stealing the money, because she started stealing money in about 2013, essentially she was getting about $100,000 a year that she was stealing from the city of Morton. And these were the two primary baskets of theft that the auditor's office was looking at. Now, in addition to that, there was another $17,230 that the auditor classifies here as questionable expenditures. Those were also happened during this time. They came up in the audit. Officially, she's not being charged with stealing those funds, but those were really questionable decisions, money that was spent or seems to have gone, and it wasn't really clear how it was spent or where it went or why it was being used. Obviously, there was a lot of lack of controls in the city of Morton. This sometimes happens in small jurisdictions, and this is all just an example of something that started with a small problem, and then it got exposed as the fraud investigators dug a little bit deeper. Now, the Morton Clerk Treasurer is not the first place champion for theft of public funds. That recognition here goes to Kova Campbell here, who stole $7 million in Tacoma from a low-income housing project. I'm sure she's not the only one, but so far she's the one who's serving a prison sentence for having stolen the largest amount of money. And so in Washington State, she currently is a first place holder and the current state record holder for somebody who's been caught stealing public funds.
Busted.
And of course, I'm anticipating that if we keep getting involved and paying attention to what's actually going on in local government, her first place position is likely to fall as we start to catch some of the other people who inevitably are stealing money right now from tax dollars from wherever it is that they happen to be working. Because the one thing that we know about fraud is that, unfortunately, it's a human nature condition. It's not a partisan thing. It is the kind of thing where bad people will come into government, and the sloppier, the more incompetent, the more corrupt government is, the easier it is for fraudsters to come in and take advantage of that. And unfortunately, it happens more than most people realize. Because right now, as you are watching this video, somewhere in a community near you, if it's not at your community directly, there are people who are actually stealing your tax dollars, and frankly, they're passing every state audit with flying colors, and nobody knows that it's going on. Which is why you can actually help me and help others find these people if you are willing to look, because I believe that a lot of this can be exposed if you are willing to follow the money. Following the money is a good place to start. If you want to get involved in helping to shine a little bit of sunshine on what's going on in government and why your taxes are so high, because God knows a lot of your tax dollars, unfortunately, aren't going to what you think they're going for. And a surprising amount of it is actually stolen or squandered or wasted. And if you want to help expose the truth and get engaged and involved, this is a good place to start. Always follow the money and engage. And that is why we are putting on our Doge Washington classes all around Washington State. If you want to learn how to be more involved and engaged so you can catch people like this person and help kind of get that information out there, and most importantly, maybe stop it from happening as much. Make our local government just a little bit more accountable to us and stop wasting and squandering and stealing our tax dollars that we send to it. You can be involved in that process, and this is one of the ways to do it. If you want to find out where we're doing some of our Doge Washington training classes, you can go to my website linked down below, and you can see some of the class schedule coming up. Probably there's going to be a training session near you, and if there isn't, see if you can organize some friends of yours and get more engaged and involved, get enough of them or a group together that's willing to sponsor this, and I can come out and put on a class where you live too. I think this is an important step for us to work, and it's also important for us to tell these stories and explain how these bad guys are caught when they do get caught going out and stealing the money, because there's the only way that I think we can consistently do this and stop and reduce the amount of fraud, theft, and waste in government is if we're willing to step up and do our part. But that requires us to show up, because the future belongs to those who show up.